Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. It is February 23rd. We're here with the Daily Show. It's myself, James Herrick, joined by Griffin Toothpaste Crest. Last time it was just toothpaste. Today we've got the full name, so
Yep.
everyone knows it's you. How you doing today?
I'm doing good today. How are you doing, James?
I'm not bad. It's a little snowy here in Michigan, so we're locked up and no driving today. The roads are pretty bad, so this is what I've got on the docket. The classes got canceled, so we're running with the daily show. So
Love
it
that.
should be a good time. Should be a good time. And the very first thing that we've got on the docket to talk about today is Nate McMillan getting fired by the Hawks. I feel like this was kind of a long time coming. I don't think anyone is too surprised by this news. But still, what is your initial reaction to the news that McMillan, Jesus, is out as the head coach?
I mean, I'm honestly not surprised McMillan was out. I was expecting him to be out since the start of just when the Hawks were just so mid. I mean, they were 15 and 15 at home. They were just I don't know. If you look at all their stats, they were just so even across the board. I mean, they're getting nothing going right now with even with the addition to DeJounte Murray. And even though John Collins hasn't been himself, I still think that Hawks team should have high expectations because they have been in the past. But my initial reaction was I think that Ime Udoka could be a possible head coaching candidate. I can't really think of anyone else who fits them better. And I think Trey Young also said that he wants them. He wants Ime.
Yeah, I'm with you too. There's been smoke here for a long time that McMillan was on the hot seat because
Mhm.
there's been rumors that Trey Young wasn't happy with them, and they kind of had that whole back and forth. I think that was over the offseason.
Yeah.
And then there's been the John Collins back and forth as well. So it's not like this was news, really. I mean, it was news, but it's not like it was a surprise at
Yeah.
all. And then I think last time when it was me and you recording, I think you said the Hawks were the definition of mid, and that
Yeah, I did.
like
Yep.
perfectly perfectly describes what they let them go at all. And I agree with you. I think Ime Udoka is the perfect replacement. Last year with Boston, he had a good year, led them to the finals, and they were kind of in a situation. I don't want to say similar, but they were underperforming a little bit at the end of the year, and then he kind of brought that team back together, helped them improve. So I think he is someone who has kind of proven that he can help pull a team out of a rough situation like this.
Yeah. I also think that Ime, if you look at what he did with the Celtics last season, with their defense was historically one of the best of all time. I mean,
Mhm.
I think that what he can do with the Hawks, if he gets hired, then he could possibly hide Trey Young in their defense. And John Collins is still a very good defender. Clint Capella is good. AJ Griffin. I mean, you got all those guys that can defend really well. DeJounte Murray even. I mean, that could really bring the Hawks to the next level in terms of defensive ability. And he's just a good coach overall too. So I think that'll be an A+ hire for the Hawks if they can do it, and we could see him contention in the East if it happens.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think the other name that I saw a little bit as far as rumors was Quentin Snyder,
Yep.
and I don't think is a bad option, but I do think that Ime Udoka is the preferred option, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, I'm interested to see how he works Sadiq Bey into that lineup too, because he's someone where if they can get him going, that's another weapon that they have on that team as well.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that Sadiq Bey trade.
That worked out well for them. They gave up some second round picks, got Sadiq Bey. If they can get him going, that's another wing. They've got a lot of wings out there, and that could be a strong team in the East.
Yep.
Um, Kind of moving away from the NBA and moving over to the NFL. We will probably circle back to the NBA time permitting, but we're going to hit on some other more relevant stuff first, and then we'll work back if we've got the time. But NFL franchise tags are open. Teams can start tagging players. And right now, I mean, the biggest name right there right now for a franchise tag is Lamar Jackson. And it's interesting to see what the Hawks, the Ravens are going to do here. What do you think the Ravens should do with Lamar this offseason?
I mean, I think I think it's the best interest for the Ravens. Like, I feel like you have to sign him to a long-term deal if you're them, but you can't give him that much money. I mean, he's gonna want it. So I feel like at that point, you're gonna have to franchise tag Lamar. And I know there's been like a lot of speculation with him like being traded. I think the Ravens just gave Roquan Smith a boatload of money. So I mean, you in the long term run, you can't give Lamar too much
Mhm.
money. And I feel like even though it's sad to say, he probably won't be their quarterback for the future. And I mean, seeing him like hold up with injuries too, like running quarterbacks don't obviously have the lifetime of just being able to last in the NFL. But I feel like the Ravens have to franchise tag him at this point.
Yeah, I feel that. And I think it's a good point where, depending on how much you pay Lamar, there's a good chance that you then don't have the capital to build a strong team around him. And the Ravens have not performed well in the draft as of late. I guess Kyle Hamilton has played well, but for the
Mhm.
most part, over the last 4 or 5 years, they haven't done incredibly well at hitting. They don't have a lot of young guys on cheap deals. A lot of their top talent is highly paid talent, so they don't have a lot of money to really be spending out this offseason. And if they put it all towards Lamar, like you said, you still have to build a team around that. And I think it's interesting because I'm not sure if he's going to play on that franchise tag. If
Yeah.
you tag him, does he play? I'm not sure that he does.
I don't think he does. I have to agree with you, James. I mean, you look at stars in the NFL like in the past, like they're not going to play on that tag. They
Mhm.
want that guaranteed money, and I feel like Lamar's that type of guy. Like he's not a Terry McLaurin. Like he's going to be a Debo Samuel type of guy, where he's going to take that money, or if he wants a trade to get more money, he's going to do it. I mean, you could see the Falcons giving up like what 4 first-round picks for him. I could
Mhm.
totally see that.
I
And
think it's I think it's interesting too as to I think the Ravens are going to put the tag on him. The question is it the exclusive or the non-exclusive? Because if they give him the exclusive, then no other team can negotiate with them, and they can pretty much shop him at that point. And
yeah,
I'm interested to see if that's the route they take, or if they want the easy way out, they can just hit him with the non-exclusive tag, and then teams pretty much can. He's pretty much a free agent at that point, but teams would have to give up 2 first-round picks to get him back. That may be the route they take if they just want to like clean their hands of him. You don't have to
yeah,
worry about getting a trade package. You're pretty much just getting 2 first-round picks no matter what.
mhm,
You can probably get more if you hit him with the tag and then start shopping them around. You can probably get 3 or 4, which
yep.
at the end of the day is a lot more beneficial. But they still have that easy route that they could take of throwing on that non-exclusive and then just wiping their hands clean and not even worrying about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'll be a great deal for the Ravens too. I mean, this quarterback class like is decently strong. It's very top heavy, but I think that if the Ravens could trade Lamar on that exclusive and get like take the money out of his contract, they don't have to pay him, and you're looking towards the future for that team. I think that like you already have so many guys who are being paid on the Ravens. Like you're not gonna have enough cap space to supply Lamar with receivers. You're not gonna pay J.K. Dobbins or any of that. Those guys. Mark Andrews gonna walk soon. Like who knows? And
Mhm.
I feel like you have to ship him off now when the time is coming.
Yep. Now's the perfect time because, like you said, you can see that on the horizon of how you're going to lose some guys. Um, and additionally, like this, I don't like this quarterback class is good. It's fine. The Ravens aren't going to be in a position to get one unless they maybe try and make a move on Richardson if he starts to slide. But
Mhm.
like, if you could, you obviously never want to mail in a year, but like next year, you could, if you don't have Lamar this year, the chances that you get a high pick next year if you're the Ravens are decently high.
Yeah.
And that's a year with a good quarterback class. And even if you don't, even if you're still middle of the pack, maybe make the playoffs, squeeze in at the back end, and they'd be a good year without Lamar.
Mhm.
But at that point, there's still that quarterback class is much deeper, where you've got a better chance of finding someone in the 10 to 20 range in comparison to this year.
Yep. I agree.
And then the other team that really has a lot of questions surrounding their team with the franchise tags is the Giants. They've got Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley. You can only give one tag, and both of those guys are kind of questionable. Of should you bring them back? It looks like the Giants want to bring back both of those guys, but
Mhm.
then there's a lot of questions over how much do you pay those guys? How much do those guys want? If you get to only tag one, who do you tag? So there's a lot of questions there. So if you had to pick between tagging Jones and Saquon, which one you going with?
I feel like I have to go with Barkley. I mean, I know he's old and a running back, but that tag isn't as big as a QB's one. What I would do with Jones per se is I would give him a prove it deal. I would say give him like a 2-year deal possibly. I mean, he's not that guy already. You have like, I mean, Brian Dable kind of transformed him this year. But I think that you can't be like push ahead with Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's not smart for them. I know the market is getting bigger for quarterbacks, but you don't want to give Daniel Jones that guaranteed money. I mean, who knows if he's gonna that last year was his only good year. I mean, is he gonna get any better with that money? Who knows? And I think that you have to give him a prove it deal, like a 2-year, just like around like $60 million. I feel like that's pretty fair, like 30 mil. And I'd say just go out and play well. And if you do it, we'll reward you. So I think that's what you have to do with the Giants.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think there's a couple ways the Giants can play that because I don't really disagree with what you said. But I think there's a world where tagging Jones actually makes more sense because you can almost use the franchise tag as a prove it deal in a
Yeah,
way
I agree.
where you can make it I think it comes out to like 1 year, 40 million, 45 in that range for this year's tag for the quarterback. So I think you can almost use the franchise tag as that prove it deal. And unlike Lamar, Jones doesn't really have that option of not playing under the tag. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think Daniel Jones could afford not playing under the franchise tag. So he would have to go out there, and you could almost use that as your prove it deal and then determine if you have to pay him the year after. That may make sense. And with Saquon, I think it could also make sense in terms of if they want to extend Saquon, I think it makes sense to do it now rather than wait a year because each year on that deal, it's going to look worse. So I think now it makes more sense to try and re-sign him. And I think if you franchise tag him, you could work out a deal before the year starts anyway. So it may make sense for them to tag Saquon and then work out the deal just as so you have that safety net of the franchise tag.
Yeah. I also think that, I mean, with Saquon's commanding what 16 mil a year, I think that's what he said in a report that I saw. But I mean, what's the franchise tag for running backs as of right now?
Oh, I looked at the list earlier, but I kind of glossed over the quarterback, or I glossed over the running back section because I was just kind of curious of what the quarterback tag was looking like. I'll see if I can pull it up real quick. Oh, geez. Could you hear that?
No, I couldn't.
Oh, I had the audio from there was audio like it was one of those articles where they put a first of all, there's a rant in itself. Articles that embed videos into the articles so
I
they
hate
get
that.
more views.
Mhm.
And then I'm sitting here and I pull up this article that had the tags that I looked at earlier, and it starts playing the article out loud. And then I think it's going on the StreamYard, so I'm all tossed off.
No, you're good.
The running back franchise tag is 10 million, according to NBC Sports.
I think that's a good. If you're the Giants, I think you have to take that at that point.
It's a lot better than 16 for a running back. It's a lot better than 16.
Exactly. I mean, Barkley is getting old, so I mean, it's so tough to know what NFL GMs are thinking right now with that situation.
Yeah, running backs in general too. That's not just like Saquon or like because Saquon has his own age and injury concerns in his own right, but then you have to look at like the running back position as a whole it's become more of a trend to lean away from paying those guys.
Yep.
And now you're looking at someone like Zeke, for example, where that was paying teams lessons like that where Zeke was a great running back, but that contract did not work out towards the tail end of it.
Yeah. And I feel like that's another possible franchise tag is Tony Pollard, speaking of the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a report that Dalton Schultz is most likely to be walking away from the Cowboys if he's not franchise tagged. And I think like you got two young guys like Blake Jarwin and Peyton Hendershot, shout out IU, but I feel like you got to keep those guys and let Schultz walk. As much as Schultz is Dak's safety blanket and like just check down after check down, he's that guy. I mean, I think you can't pay him at this point with all the Zeke and Tony Pollard drama. I feel like you have to keep that tandem together. If not, Zeke takes a pay cut or walks. So.
Yeah, and kind of sticking on the Cowboys here. I just looked. The tight end franchise tag is 11 million. So that may be a little pricey for Schultz. So I think out of those three players, Zeke, Tony Pollard and Schultz. I think I want to keep Pollard on my team the most out of those three. If that means sticking a franchise tag on him for 1 year, that's something that I'd be willing to do. And then Zeke, I agree with you. I think he's either got to be cut or restructured.
Mm-hmm.
Paid the share of him is now of to what they're paying him.
Yeah. I mean, he's getting how much? He's getting a ton of money right now, and it's way too much.
Yeah, I don't even remember what it is off the top of my head, but it is bad. I think it was north of like 13, 14 million. Where I don't remember off the top of my head. I could figure it out, but it's another bad one where the Cowboys are also another team that do not have the most money to really be between your guys that they're paying him.
Yeah, he signed a 6-year, $90 million.
Zeke is signed. Yeah, and he's only making 10 in 2023. Oh, and that's with the option. Cap hit is 16 though.
Ooh,
so that's not great. And then a couple other players here on the tag or considering the tag. I think an interesting one is Josh Jacobs, where he's coming off a career year here, and Raiders shot themselves in the foot because they had the 5th-year option on him, declined it. They're left in the situation of resign or like him. The team is looking. I don't know what you do because that future in Las Vegas does not look great either way. You deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you gotta tag him. I feel like you have to. You don't want to sign him to like a big deal right now because you like Vegas's future is, like you said, is just so uncertain right now. I mean, Derek Carr's gone. Who knows if Devontae Adams is going to leave with Carr gone? If Rodgers goes to Vegas, who knows? Like, there's so much drama going on just in that whole speculation with Rodgers and Vegas and them as a whole. So, I mean, they, like you said, they really shot themselves in the foot with not picking up Jacobs' 5th-year option. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to tag him when it's right.
Yeah, and I don't think I'd want to stay committed to Jacobs long term, just because I don't know how that's a situation where if I'm the Raiders, I want future flexibility, and I don't think giving a Jacobs a long term extension really hits that long term flexibility at all.
Yep.
And then those are all the big guys on the franchise tag. Before we move off the franchise tag, is there anyone that stuck out to you that we did not talk about?
I can't think of anyone right now.
Yeah, the other names I had written down: Jordan Poyer, Orlando Brown, Evan Ingram. Nothing crazy, just quick fire. I'd probably put the tag on Brown and Poyer, not
Ingram.
On Evan Ingram. Is probably my initial thoughts, which I think that's a pretty. And then the next news we're moving to, which is not that fun of news to talk about, Brandon Miller at Alabama played last night after a lot of controversy and some news of his situation in a murder. I guess just to start it off, let's get your thoughts on, I guess, whether he even should have played last night. Tough question.
It's such a tough question. My initial thoughts of just, I mean, man, like he had such a future. I mean, he was a projected top 3 pick, top 5, something like that, and he had his career high last night, and 41 points, I think. And man, it's so hard to see those kids just like go through like what they know. And the Alabama head coach even said that he knew about the murder for months beforehand and what happened, and I'm just like speechless right now. I'm just trying to like process the whole thing and just like what actually happened and just like if he could have played or not. It's such a difficult decision, James.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too, and it sucks because there isn't a lot of concrete information either. It's not like there's an
Yeah.
X and O of this. Well, I guess we know his teammate Darius Miles committed a murder, but we don't know what Brandon Miller's involvement was. So on one hand, I think it's easy to say let him sit out or force him to sit out until that situation gets resolved.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that also almost casts a shadow of guilt on him
Yeah,
of
I agree.
like because if he's innocent and you force him to sit out, it almost casts like the shadow of like, oh, he did something, he was involved, he aided to this situation. Where I think in this way, it kind of portrays him in a little bit of a better sense, where he's playing and there's a lot of talk that he didn't know the whole situation, and that he wasn't directly involved, did not was going to take place. Those things tough because involved in that in basketball, but at the same time, he's which it's hard to say if he was or was not without the court proceedings. Then it's tough to kind of paint him in this light where he committed a crime when he actually didn't.
Yeah. I believe that he was the one who supplied Darius Miles with the gun
Mm-hmm.
to kind of go along with the murder. So I
Yeah.
think therefore he was charged with like not attempted, but just kind of in that whole legal process he was
Yeah.
involved.
And I Googled this beforehand just to make sure that we had all the facts correct. It was actually Miles's gun, and he was giving it
Okay.
back to him. It
Okay.
is the what I gathered from that situation. So I think that does add a level of kind of innocence on Miller's part. I don't want to completely say he's innocent, but that
Yeah.
detail kind of casts him in a little bit of a different light. Um, and there's also conflicting reports on where he was at the time of the murder, so that kind of makes it tough to call as well. But it was Miller was giving it to Mike. It was his gun. It helped Miller's in that he didn't own it, which I'm not sure if that's even that big of a deal.
Yeah.
um Yeah, I guess it was good to address that just because it was the big news of the day. So we're not trying to sweep it under the rug or anything, but it is a tough situation to call, and it is kind of tough to call it even more because he did go out and have a great game, and there was such a that was a really great game. I watched that game,
Yeah.
entertaining, but there was this whole kind of shadow over the whole situation that kind of made it even harder to watch the game or appreciate the performance that Miller put on.
I agree.
And since that's not that fun to talk about, we got it out of the way. Let's move on to a lighter topic here. Deion Sanders, Colorado. You wrote a post per, I think it was Trey's idea, right? And you picked
Yeah.
it up with Can Deion Sanders win a natty at Colorado? Interesting. I get into it, explain what you wrote.
So I pretty much wrote just like plain answer is no. I do not think that Deion Sanders can win a title with Colorado. I think that he could win a Pac-12 championship, as I said in the post. But I feel like a national championship is a very big reach. In 5 years at Colorado, I just feel like with all the powerhouses, as long as Nick Saban and Kirby Smart are at Georgia and Alabama, and Ryan Day is at Ohio State, and John Harbaugh as Michigan, I mean, I feel like there's just no way that Dion can do it. I would love to see him pull it off, but I think it's just such a hard reach for him to do it. I think it's easier that USC and UCLA are going to the Big Ten right now
Mhm.
in the future, but with like teams moving in the Pac-12, I just feel like it's pretty tough to look at as of right now. I mean, he's getting all the recruits that he can, and I know Julian posted an article just today about just like what recruits Dion wants, but it's just so hard to really predict and just like think that he can actually do it.
Yeah, I agree with you in a sense there, but I'm not as bullish on the no. Um, I do agree with your point that it's tough to go out there and beat someone like Kirby Smart and someone like Nick Saban and all these powerhouse programs that have infinitely more resources than Colorado. But I do think there's a level of this where at the end of the day, have it. And someone at a small school like Colorado that can bring in the players, I think it's Deion Sanders can do that better than anybody at any small school because it is Deion and because we're looking at one of the best recruiters in the country. So
Yep.
I would, if I was forced to like bet on a yes or a no, I'd have to take the no. I can't take the yes. But I do think there's an
Yeah.
interesting like level at play here where I think he does have an out. Think the 12 team time because it kind of gives you an opportunity. You make the 12 team, maybe like you said, win the Pac-12 and get in and get a bye. If you can get hot at the right time, it gives you a little bit of a better chance. Maybe create some chaos. Maybe Alabama and Georgia are on the opposite side of the bracket and have to play, and one of them knocks the other one out, and maybe some team gets hot and makes an upset on the opposite side of the bracket. Maybe you get some help. So I think the 12-team playoffs and the recruiting kind of help them a little bit. But at the end of the day, I can't sit here and be like, oh, yeah, Deion Sanders is going to win a national championship.
Yeah.
That'd be a really dumb thing to say.
Yeah. I think that this year is like the year for him to do it. I mean, he's taking all the Jackson State guys and even the Colorado guys, and he's had a ton of commits this year. I think around 14 5 stars, or not 5 stars, just like recruitments in general. And I feel like Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Michigan are all at their weakest points as of right now, and all those top dogs. And I feel like this is the year with Shorter Sanders and Dion, and they can really get something going. So I feel like this is the year that they can do it.
I interested. Agree with that point there. I think this year might actually be his best chance with the Stars, where he has the quarterback. He has Travis Hunter. He'll get Cormani McClain. He's going to have a lot of great players on that team, but I'm not sure that the depth is there, which is the issue.
Yeah.
So it's weird in a sense where he got the stars before the depth. Usually, when you're building a team, it's easier to do that the opposite way, where you can build the depth, you can get good in the trenches, you can land a handful of offensive line recruits. But Deion forced the other way around, which I think is like a speculation or viewership standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then moving on here, we've got Live Golf is next up on the docket. And Liv, can you explain this news? Because this was your idea, so I just want to make sure we're getting all the news correctly. So can you explain just what the news in itself is?
Yeah. So for the viewers at home, Live Golf is kind of just more of an independent kind of golf tour in a way. It's based out of Saudi Arabia. And a lot of people from the PGA Tour moved over there based on guaranteed money. Like Dustin Johnson was a big name. He was a former number one in the world. Phil Mickelson, former Masters winner, along with Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, Sergio Garcia, all those big names. Like you might not have heard of them, but they're very good players. Even Cameron Smith, I believe, also went over there. He was one of the best players, like as of right now. And they all like were banned from the PGA Tour a while back. And the owner and CEO of the PGA Tour said, no, we're not going to allow you in any majors. But as of right now, the Open, so that's based in just in Europe, and that was the first major tournament in golf to allow the LIV players to really play in it. And now that the Open is having them, there's like all the other four, the Masters, the US Open, and I can't think of the other one right now, are allowing the LIV players to join.
Yeah. So I'm a fan of this. I like this because Live is pulling away players, right? So now we're in a spot where all of the best players in the world aren't consistently playing with each other. Those guys you listed, for those that don't know, it'd be like pulling an elite quarterback off an NFL team and then having them play in a different league. So this, in a way, is kind of like making sure that there's still 4 times a year where the best players in the world can still play against each other. And I like that. I think that's good for golf, where maybe they don't play each other every weekend or every week like they would traditionally. But I do
Yep.
think it is strong to still have the best players in the world are the players who are competing for the majors. And I think it's strong to keep that tradition going, where when it's Masters time, you want to well, listen, point guys that can win these tournaments. It's not like we're talking about bums playing. We're talking about guys with the potential to win, and this kind of
Yeah.
keeps that structure together, where we can still see the best players in the world play against each other.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the biggest thing, like what I love about, like, I don't condone live. I'm not a fan of live golf.
I agree.
First of all, just I'm a big PGA Tour guy. I'm stuck with them. And at first, like I thought the live guys were kind of like, okay, you want the money, but you don't really care about like your legacy or anything like that. Like you're gonna get paid on the PGA Tour. But what I love that live has kind of transformed the way of golf is that they've allowed players to get paid more, and it's kind of expanding the world of golf too. Like you said, that they're not there like you can bring all the guys together and you get to actually see like um 72 hole tournament of just like those guys can win the whole thing, 54 hole. But I mean, if you look at it now, I think it's a great point too, and it's even expanded to the LPGA tour as well. And the PGA and LPGA are having a co-hosted tournament, I believe, in 2023 of them combining together and having 2 male athletes and 1 female athletes. I might not be correct on that, but in that kind of sense, and they're combining together. So I feel like it's a really good place in golf where it is right now.
Yeah, and I think this is interesting because, like, even for the guys that don't go over to live golf, I think there is an element of benefit that they get, because
Mhm.
even then, that at least gives the PJ a sense where if we're not on top of our game, we're not doing the right thing, guys in out, and it kind of forces the PG to be on top of its game in a sense. So I think that is like an indirect positive of live. And I do agree with you as well. I'm a PJ Tour guy. And it does kind of suck that the live is taking and plucking away some players just from a competitive standpoint. But I think like we talked about earlier, finding ways to kind of keep that competitiveness despite live, I think is crucial. And it's kind of changing the way that golf and the trajectory of golf and the way the game works. And I think things like this, where this is a big deal, or 3 of these kind of change or fix the way that we can work PGA and live together, I think that ultimately will help the game of golf.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it also gives like an opportunity for the younger guys coming out of college too, as well, and those amateurs that they can actually qualify for events now. Not that like all those big dogs are gonna kind of take them down, and because a lot of guys move to live, and I feel like it's also created just more of a better salary for the PGA Tour. It's at an all-time high now, and I think John Rahm has won like $4 million already, and it's not even March in the season, and that's crazy. So good for LA, good for live, good for the PGA Tour, and just good for golf in general.
Yeah, I'm with you. We don't talk about golf much here at Vendetta. I think there's been some PGA Tour 2K content, or I don't, whatever that game is called. I might have the name wrong on that, but we don't talk about the PGA Tour much. So nice little way to slip it in here. So I'm kind of glad we were able to talk about that. But at the end of the day, I do think we're on the same page here. Of we're looking at ways to grow the game of golf, because golf is something that I don't think you know about this about me, but I'm a big golf fan. I don't write about it for the site. I don't produce golf content, but if we can grow the game of golf, there's a lot of ways that it can be done, and not enough people really pay attention to the PGA Tour. Golf don't PGA Tour. There's a lot of things that can be improved that sport.
Yeah, I agree.
And then kind of moving it on here, as we've really burnt through the list of topics that we had, and we're sitting at 35 minutes. So that leaves us a bunch of time here to sit and talk about the NBA and kind of the rest of the NBA season. First, talked about this a couple days moving to the Clippers. This is an interesting move, very interesting move. What's your initial reactions to Westbrook heading to the Clippers, and how do you think this plays out?
I think honestly, like it's a good move for the Clippers. I know Trey might hate that comment and take from me, but I think if Westbrook goes to somewhere he loves and like wants to be there, it seems like on the Clippers post, it seems like he was happy, like he wanted to be there. And I feel like if he can collaborate with PG again and just like Kawhi and all those guys, they can form like a very good team. And I think that it could be revitalize Westbrook's career as long as like he may not play a lot of minutes, but that's still good for him. I feel like if he can get back to the swing of things and not like just kind of be bombarded by like Lakers fans and all that. And I think that Clippers could go very far with Westbrook.
Yeah, I think it's all going to depend on the role here. I think if they can find the role to put Westbrook in and find something that involves him, not having it to play a big role, and if the Clippers' season success does not depend on Russell Westbrook, that's going to help them a lot, right? And I don't want to see them work guys like Bones Highland or Eric Gordon or man out of the rotation, because those guys have played really well this year. And I think they need to find that balance of how many minutes are we giving Russ? What are we asking Russ to do? Because if you ask him to do too much, I think that is when things unravel. So I do think this is kind of playing with fire in a sense where things can be really bad. Um,
Mhm.
but in a year, this may be the type where if it works out, I, I think there's a lot of potential here.
I agree.
And then similarly, we had not similarly. I don't know why I said similarly. Kyrie Irving, not similar situation at all. Kyrie Irving heading over to the Dallas Mavericks, and I think this is going to work out fine on the court. But I think the interesting point about this is what this looks like after this season, as to whether Kyrie sticks with the Mavs if he moves on. So, what do you think this looks like for the Mavs as more of a long-term move?
I think for the Mavs, like if they can sign Kyrie back again this offseason, it'll be a very great move. Like they would clearly win the trade for him with Brooklyn.
Mhm.
But I feel like if they can't sign him back, then I feel like it would be a huge L on their part. I mean, you saw like I saw Mark Cuban just like kind of dapping up and just like being good owner. And he was just like talking with Kyrie at the All-Star game. And I was like, okay, if he sticks with the Mavericks, then they're in a good spot. I feel like if Luka and him can kind of figure out like who's really ball dominant in this sense, like you saw that I think it was against the Timberwolves that they were kind of passing the ball back and forth and a potential game winner, and they didn't know who to take the last shot. And I feel like if you can give it this season and Kyrie resigns again, the Mavericks could be very good with the Luka and Kyrie tandem.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point here. Where if they can't keep him long term, I think that hurts this trade a lot. It does help that they didn't give up much for him. It's not like they were dishing out 3 or 4 first round picks. They only had to give up 1 first rounder and a couple of players, so that does help them a little bit. But long term, I think this could work out well. You get a half season pretty much to figure out, what do we have here? Is this going to work? Is this going to work in the playoffs even? So you get to kind of play with it. But I think this kind of, if you can keep it long term, that's fine and it's great. But this roster still is not a very good roster.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of those two players, you still
Yeah.
need some improvements on the wing. You still need a lot of help at the front court and at center. So it's tough because you have to pair someone with Luka Doncic. You can't
Yeah.
just go all willy nilly. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, it kind of feels like this is a band aid of like, this is the guy we could get
Yeah.
at the trade deadline. So
Yep.
this is what we have to roll with. It doesn't feel like they went out and were like, we really like Kyrie Irving.
Mm-hmm.
If we're like, well, Kyrie Irving's have, so that's the move we're gonna make, and hopefully it works out.
Yeah. I think that I don't know if you and I talked about this a while back on the show, but we did NBA trade and just like potential suitors, and OG Anunoby was one that came up.
Mhm,
And I think that if he can
mhm,
get traded to the Mavericks this offseason, they could be very good. I mean, you get a good wing defender if you don't give up too much for him. I'm not saying you should give up like 4 first-round picks like the Raptors want or 2 or how many you want. I think if Christian Wood can be
mhm.
there, OG, Kyrie stays, and Luka, I think that'd be a pretty good team.
Yeah, I think that is a kind of the Raptors as a team were kind of an enigma on the trade
Mhm.
deadline where there's all this talk about them being sellers and then moving off someone like OG or maybe and they end up adding
Jakob Poeltl.
total. It's like, what are we doing here? You're not making the playoffs this year. Giving up a
Yeah,
first round. Yeah, it's like you're giving up a first round pick. What I don't really get that move
I don't
in
get
its
that.
own right, and it kind of made the deadline worse in a way.
I agree. I mean, I think the
But
Raptors
yeah,
like when
like, um,
what were you gonna say?
go ahead.
I mean, I thought like that.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I uh, I thought that just like the Raptors and like all those teams that are kind of in the bubble now and like the play in, like I feel like the
Mhm.
Raptors are just like anyone like that, kind of in that sense in any sport really. Why would you? You're in like a really bad spot. You're not in that lottery pick spot. You're not gonna do well in the playoffs. You're not gonna do anything. And I feel like you got all that young talent that you're wasting. You have to either go all in or you got to sell that team. I mean, you got to sell Scotty Barnes as like as good as the Raptors may think he is, which I don't think he's like that amazing as a player. He can be very good, but not just like superstar ability. I think that what they did at the trade deadline was just so stupid.
Yeah, I'm with you, and it really hurt the trade deadline as a whole because we didn't see guys like OG Anunoby getting moved, and about the Knicks adding OG, I think that was I think good. The Knicks did a good job of kind of switching lanes and going after Josh Hart. I don't think he's as
Yeah.
good of a player as OG by any sense, but that's
Mhm.
still someone added some wing depth, a good defender, and they didn't have to give up much for him. So I think that was a good move by the Knicks to kind of adjust after the Raptors kind of threw a wrench in the whole trade deadline, and that makes that Knicks team better. And I'm interested to see how they perform down the stretch because there's a lot of room for someone to kind of get hot in the East because I
Yeah.
think we've got 2 to 4 teams in the East where you've got your top two, Bucks, Celtics, and then you've got your next two, Cavs, Sixers, and after that, you're looking for a team like can the Knicks get hot or get a little bit better and kind of jump into that second tier. And I think that was a move that could help them get to that point too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're kind of bringing back the Villanova teammates for with Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, which I love. I
Hmm.
love when players like in the NBA, kind of that play in college, are back together. And I think you made a very good point with that fifth spot in the East is like up for grabs. Like anyone can take that. And I feel like what you said with like the Knicks, I think that's a very good point. Like as I said, that they could get hot and they could get very hot. I mean, the Raptors could, who knows? Like I feel like the East is like up for grabs. I think whoever plays the Sixers in the first round could definitely knock them out. But I think they'd be playing the 5 seed right now. I'm pretty sure if they're fourth. But I
Hmm.
think the Sixers could be upset in the first round. I don't think the Cavs, the Celtics, the Bucks will, but I think that whoever gets a 5 seed could definitely do some damage in the East.
Yeah, barring injury, I think the 76ers are the most likely team to lose in the first round. I just think that the Cavs are a little bit too deep and
Yeah,
they're good defensively. I think that's a hard team to upset in the first round. I think the Sixers have more like elite potential because they have the best players, or the best player out of the two teams in Embiid. But like comparing those two teams, I do think if you're gonna catch one and try and catch one in the first round, I do think the team a little bit more wishy washy.
yeah. I mean, the
Um,
Sixers weren't
and now
that
that we've brought up
good.
some playoff,
What are you gonna say?
go for it.
I mean, I said like before.
No,
I
go
mean, you
for it.
look
We're
at the
talking
Sixers.
over each
Yeah,
other because we got these internet problems. But
I know. Um, But what I was like saying before is just like the Sixers were kind of in a slump. Like they didn't know really their identity at the beginning of the season. So that's like all what I was gonna say is they're not as deep as the Cavs were. And I think in the playoffs, like if you look at the Suns now with KD, they're not deep at all. And I don't think that they're gonna really want their players to play 40 minutes a night for them to do well. And I think that's the same situation with the Sixers as well compared to the Cavs.
Hmm. And then kind of switching over to the Western Conference, I think the Western Conference is where things get interesting because I think those teams outside of the top, like elite teams, those teams coming in with your 6, 7, 8, maybe even a team that gets into, I think those teams are a lot better than those teams in the East and have a left bracket in the West is going to be really dangerous, really dangerous. And I'm interested to see how that plays out.
I agree. I think that who are the teams on the bubble right now of the West? I know the Timberwolves are up there. The Lakers could squeak in the play-in. The Clippers are fifth, fourth, I think, something like that. Um, if I can pull up the
Yeah, it's
NBA.
it's very, very close. Um, I will look here, but we've obviously got the Nuggets at the top, but regardless of where the standings are, though, there's not much depth here or difference here. Um, Clippers are the 4 seed and 3 wins. They're the 2 seed at 32 wins. They've played a couple less games, and they've got 29 wins. The 10 seed Thunder have 28 wins. So that whole Western Conference can really get shook up. So the teams you're looking at
Yeah,
on the bubble, you've got Mavericks at 6, Pelicans at 7, Timberwolves at 8, Warriors at 9, then you got Thunder at 10, Jazz at 11, and then you've got Trailblazers 12, Lakers at 13. Um, you know, might be a little late for some of the stages. The potential is still there technically.
hmm I think that an interesting team to watch in that bubble area is the Trailblazers. I think that even though they're 12th and they're kind of back like a few games, I think that if they can pass the Warriors right now, which I very much think they can, and the Wolves, then I think if they stay healthy with Jeremy Grant, Nurkic, Anthony Simons, like Shaden Sharp even, and Damian Lillard, like I think they could definitely upset one of the top teams. If they play the Nuggets, I would be shitting myself if I was Jokic and the rest of the Nuggets.
Yeah, and that's a team too where that's a prime example of a team that can get hot, right? That
Mhm.
is a team where if you get hot, if you run into a hot Damian Lillard for 4 to 7 games, that's not a team I want any part of. So I do
No.
like that call, and
Mhm.
there's a good shot that they pass up a team like the Warriors, especially um, Timberwolves team that would be scared of point.
Another team that I think that could do damage is the Pelicans. Even though they're at 7 right now, I think that if they can get Brandon Ingram back, CJ and Zion, if they're not all like pretty much out for the season, then they could be very good. I think the Mavericks could fall a little bit depending on how Kyrie plays and their whole like depth and all that. I think the Suns rule off for the championship. I don't think they're going to do anything, even with KD. And that may be a hot take for some people, but I just feel like in playoff NBA basketball, you need depth. I mean, you look at the Celtics last year, like Robert Williams as their pretty much like their third center, like their second, third center coming off, and he's like a defensive player of the year candidate. And Peyton Pritchard, even he gets no minutes and he can snipe it from anywhere. Um, but I think a team that like I think the Kings as well could definitely be a little fallen off in the playoffs. If they're not hot, then I feel like they rely on the three way too much. And I feel like I thought that with Chickster in our last episode that I said Westbrook to them would be a good addition, even though he's on the Clippers right now. Because the Kings they shoot too much, and that would Westbrook going to the basket and like him being able to rebound a lot more and just like kick it to all the shooters. I think would have been a great fit for them, just because he kind of can expand and open up their offense a lot more.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point too, Russ to the Kings too, because there's no pressure there. Like that's been the
Mhm.
thing with Russ is he's constantly been pressured since he's left his um kind of peak of his career. There was obviously a lot of pressure and media attention, averaging a triple double. Since he's come down, he's been in the odds of how he would play in Washington next to Beal. Everyone wanted to see what that team would look like with him in LA next to Bron.
Mhm.
I think Sacramento's like from a mental standpoint, I feel like you're almost leaving all that pressure behind, even just
Yeah.
outside of basketball. So I didn't even think about that as a potential fit, but I did think you make a good point where
Mhm.
from a basketball standpoint, he can that's really a contrast of styles, and he could be an interesting piece to that team, or would have been. And a team that I like here, that we talked a little bit about earlier, obviously, and Russ is on this team, but I like the Clippers because if Kawhi and Paul George can stay healthy, I'm not ready to count them out
Yeah.
based off what Kawhi did with the Raptors and the things that he's done even prior to that. But the Raptors is obviously the best example of him leading a team. I think he still has those capabilities where if he gets hot, he can still be. He's the player that you want in the finals. He's still one of the best two-way players in the league. And then outside of him, you've got Paul George, who is no longer in his prime, but I think he's still a serviceable player. Just you better hope he doesn't get cold because when he gets cold, it's bad. I think like Terrence Mann are good players. Highland, I do think there's some depth with scoring outside of the two main guys as well. And Zubac has been an underrated player down low as well. So I think that may be the Western Conference team that I think is getting slept on a little bit, especially since you've got all the attention around the teams that are making the big moves in the West.
Yeah. I agree, and even, like, some underrated moves from the Clippers were just getting Eric Gordon too. Like, they have him, they have a good shooter outside, and even,
Mhm.
Mason Plumlee from the Hornets too. I think that was a great addition from them. Plumlee is, like, a good backup center. He's not elite, but he's still a good player. He's a good role player for the Clippers, and I think that, all those additions are gonna pay off for them at the end.
Yeah, they didn't get a lot of attention because they didn't go out and get the star, but they did do a good job of going out and making their team better at the deadline and setting themselves up a little bit better for the long term. Patched a couple holes and they just got better. I think that, like we talked about earlier, with us about so long it goes wrong, and then I do think overall I do like the Clippers not because of Russ, because of the other players they have and the depth they have, and because of Kawhi.
I
And
agree.
then I am interested to hear your thoughts on the Nuggets because at Vendetta there has been a lot of back and forth about and the Nuggets championship tend to the Celtics and who makes it further between the Nuggets and Celtics, and how seriously do you kind of view the Nuggets as championship contenders?
I think you can't doubt the Nuggets. I mean, they've been like kind of on that peak or just like on that pedestal of just kind of greatness as like in the past few years with Jokic. And I think that if all those guys, even though they gave away Bones Highland and they didn't do too much around the trade deadline, and I know trade doesn't like the Nuggets as of right now, right?
Yep.
Okay. Um, I just had to make sure I didn't want to quote anything against Trey. But I think that you still have to take the Nuggets seriously, even if they're not as good and they trade away Bones Highland and all that just stuff. I think you still have to take them seriously. I think you have to take the Grizzlies seriously, the Clippers. I think the Pelicans, in a sense, you have to take them seriously. You don't want to face them. I think the Blazers, if they make the playoffs, and I think everyone else is just like, I feel like you can't really, you can just kind of brush off. I know Luca in the playoffs is kind of hard to speculate with how good he is and with Kyrie. But I think back to your point that I think the Celtics will go farther than the Nuggets. I think the Nuggets will make the conference finals, but I think the Celtics make the NBA finals, and I think they will win it all. Personally, I am a
Mhm.
Celtics fan. Just for the people watching, just like bias aside, I think that the Bucks are a little bit too weak and don't have enough depth as the Celtics do as of right now. And I think the Celtics have just played better ball at the end of the day. And I think if they can get hot again, like they did at the beginning of the season, as like they continue to do, I think that Celtics will win the championship.
Yeah. And even outside of bias, like I don't think there's any bias in that call at all, even though you're a Celtics fan, because the Celtics have a team. And they were high last year, right? That Warriors team is a tough team to deal with when you've got
Yeah.
Curry, who's playing at Curry's level, and you've got, the bench players were playing at a very high level as well. That team got very deep. Gary Payton played well. Jordan Poole added a spark, and Wiggins played the best he's ever played in his career. So it's like that's a team where if you lose that team, you can see how it happens. Like that doesn't lower the stock at all on the Celtics. And then coming in, the Celtics have played just as good this year, going through a head coaching change, through controversy, and they've continued to play at a high level. So I don't think there's much bias in saying that the Celtics win the chip. I don't think that is a hard call, my eyes as well. I'm not as bullish as you are, but if I were to be forced to pick a winner right now, I'd probably go the Celtics too.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't count out the Bucks as of right now, just because I mean they're right behind the Celtics. They're a half a game behind them right now. They're 41-17, Celtics 42-17. But I mean, if you look at the Bucks and Celtics last game, I mean the Celtics were in the hospital that entire game. Like they had no one in that game, and they took them to overtime and barely beat them. And I think that if the Celtics can just like stay healthy, Marcus Smart's healthy, Robert Williams is healthy, and even Al Horford, you rest him and face him against Giannis, I think that Celtics will easily beat the Bucks. And I know I'm being very bullish on that, as you said before, but I feel like I just have to be. I feel I'll stand behind my take, and no matter if like Trey or anyone else kind of hates on it or just like will call me out for it, I'll take the heat.
Yeah, I don't imagine that Trey will be the one to call you out on that one, because I don't want to put words in Trey's mouth, but I assume he's also very high on the Celtics.
Yeah.
And that's a great team, right? I'm with you. And at the end of the day, you brought this up earlier, but it does come down to depth to an extent where, and it's a testament, like you said, the Celtics were not healthy when they played the Bucks. They still went out there and played a competitive game. That's a testament to their depth as a team. And that's going to be important come playoff time. So I do think they're a deeper team. I'm with you on that. And at the end of like the best player on each team, like that's always the talk in the NBA. Who's the best player in the series? Picking between Giannis and Tatum, like, that's a close call. I probably lean Giannis. But the second best player in this series by a mile goes to Brown, in my opinion. Right. And I think that's kind of an important part that doesn't get talked about enough. Like, who's the two? Because the one isn't going to be hot every game unless you're, prime LeBron James or prime Michael Jordan or prime Kobe. You can't be hot every game unless you're one of the best players of all time. So that two-man is a lot more important, and that goes to the Celtics in that series by a decent margin.
Yeah. And I think back to your point of just like what we talked about and just like depth as a whole. I mean, you look at Derek White. The Celtics acquired him last year. I mean, he's been a dog. Like he's been very good for the Celtics and almost like arguably their best player at like some points in the game. And I think that if you go down the line and you say, yeah, I'll give Giannis in that series over Tatum. I'll take Brown over Drew Holiday. I mean, is Derek White next? Like the way he's been playing, I'm being serious. Like Derek White has like he's averaged like 23 points per game in like last month when the Celtics like when Tatum and Brown were like hurt off and on. I mean, he's been incredible for them. And like you go down Marcus Smart, Robert Williams, Al Horford, all those guys. Sam Hauser can shoot, like everyone. I would argue Peyton Pritchard is up there too, even though he gets no playing time.
Yeah. And I'd probably lean towards one of the big men like Robert Williams in terms of like importance in a series. I do think probably Robert Williams is going to be more important. But I think you're right. I don't think that disproves your point of how good Derek White has been and he played well in the playoffs last year.
Yeah,
where he wasn't scoring 23 points, but he was hitting the open shots, right?
exactly.
When you're on a team with Tatum and Brown, if you can sit in the corner and hit the kick out three, you add so much value to that roster. And
Mhm.
that's not just White, like you said. There's a lot of guys that can do that, whether it be Hauser, whether it be Pritchard, like you said, doesn't play, but those guys who fit their role. That's what Boston has done very well. And I think such as they have a lot of really good players who you can pinpoint and go, this is their role. And they do that role and they do it well. And then at the end of the day, they go out there and they win because they play good basketball with good players who fit their role and accomplish their role, which is something that a lot of teams don't even have the defined roles and have the play. So I think to depth in for ball. Um, Now we've hit the hour mark. We've talked about NBA. We talked about all the news that we wanted to hit. So, is there anything that you want to touch on before we get out of here? I've got nothing left on the docket on my end, just to make sure that we are all good before we call it an episode. Is there anything that you've got before we get out of here?
I can't really think of anything right now. If anything there was, I would say it can be for a future episode as we get closer to this. But March Madness, and I feel like one of these days we have to talk about Tennessee. We have to.
Chickster's been doing it. Chickster's been doing it in the Slack a lot.
Chickster and I will be rampaging on Tennessee one of these episodes about Tennessee.
Yeah, from they lost again, right? How many? They've slipped out of the top 10, right?
Yeah, I think they moved down one spot in their last loss. I'm pretty sure. I think they're like 11 or 10 now. I'm pretty sure, but they've lost like 4 of their last like 6 games or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but around that.
They've crumbled. You see, you guys saw the time. They catch them in March Madness. They've started losing too much. They're gonna fall off the. They're gonna fall off the. Well, they're gonna be if it keeps going. They'll be a 3-4. That's you guys were almost on a 1 seed that was gonna get bounced, but they started losing too much.
I know. I mean, I feel like if they keep losing and get some momentum in in the SEC tournament, like towards March, like even if they don't win it, just get hot. I would hate to play them as like a 4 or 5 seed if they get that low. I would hate to.
Also, last time we talked about college basketball, I said positive things about North Carolina, which in hindsight, I think I said some positive things, and then I think they lost like 4 in a row right afterwards. So, so I was wrong on that one. We can't just gloss over that. That was a very bad opinion on my part, and we can't just gloss over me saying UNC could get hot. They're a team I like in March. And now I'm not sure they will be even participating in March. So I don't want to gloss over that. That was a one on my end that no that one didn't age well.
Yeah, I remember Oral Roberts. I remember that was one of my teams. And they haven't lost since let me check some right. They haven't lost a game since January 9th. And it was a close one to New Mexico. They're 25-4 right now.
You buffered when you said the team or Oral Roberts. Hey, let's get Oral Roberts versus Tennessee 5 versus 12 first round.
I would love that. Give me that. Please give me that matchup. I would love to pick that.
Oral Roberts money line 10 out of 10 times. Put your bank account on it or don't. That's not gambling advice. But I may do it. I may not do it. That's a discussion for another day. Cross our fingers. I hope we get that one. But nonetheless, Griffin, it's been a good time talking to you. and we hit all the important news. So I say we call it and get out of here. And tomorrow, we've already got tomorrow's show lined up. It's going to be Julian and Jeremiah. So anyone that's listening, that's a sneak peek on tomorrow. And I don't know what they're talking about. I assume it'll be baseball because I know they both are big baseball guys. But for anyone interested, that is the sneak peek into tomorrow. Shouldn't jinx it, but that's what we've got. All right, everybody. You catch them tomorrow, but we are out for today.